Mr. Secretary, let me begin with reorganization, because I hear a lot of kind of back chatter about, well, what does it mean? How is it coming? Who is involved? And you and I have had several conversations, multiple conversations about your desire to really prepare the department for the next 100 years, and really trying to gain an efficiency so that these bureaus function in a more harmonious fashion. And I think we recognize that that has been some of what we've been dealing with over the years, is you've just got these silos within your agencies, within your bureaus, and it makes it difficult difficult internally, but even more difficult for those on the outside. And you laid down the original concept out there. I know that you have been refining that as you gain input from the outreach that you have been engaged with, whether it's with from within the agency, from governors, from Congress, from other stakeholders. Senator Udall noted a concern about not engaging as much with tribes. I'd like you to address that piece of it, because again, very, very important that we have that consultation as well. But can you, in my 5 minutes here, actually 4 minutes and 30 seconds, discuss where we are with the reorganization, how you have incorporated what you have gained from this outreach, and how you envision this reorganization being implemented?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Let me address first the problem. The chart here is how we're currently organized. And imagine an organization or business that hasn't been really reorganized in 150 years. Welcome to the Department of Interior. So let's say you have a trout and a salmon in the same stream. Upstream you have a dam, downstream you have irrigation, and if that stream passes by or through a U.S. Forest Service holding. This is currently how we manage our resources. The trout is managed by me through Fish and Wildlife. The salmon's by NOAA, Department of Commerce. Upstream water temperature and flows are generally managed by the Army Corps of Engineers, but not always. Sometimes same basins is Department of Interior exercised through Bureau of Reclamation. Downstream irrigation is oftentimes Bureau of Reclamation. Forest Service holdings are interesting. Surface is Department of Ag, exercised by U.S. Forest Service. Subsurface is BLM. And when we have an Indian compact about water, which we normally do, it's the state, BIA, and the tribe itself. Same stream, same issue. Whether it's replacing a bridge or repairing a riparian bank, we're likely to have multiple biological opinions independently produced by different bureaus with different missions in different regions. It is an impossibility structurally to manage. And so this is our proposal. And let me give you an example of how we're currently organized in Interior. This is currently just Interior, how we're organized. And it reflects a very old Department of Interior, and every time a bureau became in existence, for instance, on Bureau of Reclamation, most of those projects were out west, the regions were put in place to reflect that period in activity. So I challenge you to figure out on this map how we can manage. Next slide. So this is what we did. Is similar to unified regions, similar to how the military has combatant commands overseas, we asked the USGS to strip of current boundaries and look at science. How would we be the best stewards, and what would be the divisions based on watersheds, ecosystems, wildlife corridors, about 13 variables. They came back with a map of dividing our country into about 13 different regions based on pure science. Then I took those regions and I brought in my SES, my Senior Executive Service, not political appointees, but careers. They looked at it and they offered a number of recommendations. I didn't agree with every recommendation, but I took every recommendation. And what you have before you is a recommended reunification of regions, so the Park Service has the same region as a Bureau of Reclamation, has the same region as BLM. Then what I did is I brought in the governors. The governor's principal concern was making sure that the BLM state director remains in place. I did that. Then we looked at making 3 areas, functional areas, and doing them joint. By joint, I mean that within these new regions, that recreation, because trail systems should connect, wildlife corridors and flyways, that nexus should be protected, bike paths should connect, and there's no reason why a trailhead can't start in a Forest Service holding and transcend into a park. Secondly, NEPA. All stakeholders should be at the table in the very beginning of NEPA, rather than independently produce the biological opinions of the EISs and EAs, and finally permitting. Each of those different regions will have those 2 or those 3 areas done jointly, but the makeup is different. Because if you're in Alaska, you have a lot different recreation than in Florida. And so the different divisions will be made up of interior staff drawn from different bureaus, but they will reflect what's in that region. We're also pushing the authority and power out to make more decisions on the region level rather than DC. Because if you don't know the difference between the Yukon and the Potomac, maybe you're not in the best position to make the decision on the Yukon. Lastly, Interior itself. Today, 16% of Interior is retirement age. In 5 years, 40% of Interior is retirement age. So we are a very senior department. We don't have to rift anybody. But if someone retires as a GS-15, perhaps, in Washington or one of our large centers, we can recode that billet to a GS-7 and send them closer to the field. And lastly, our Indians. I'm a sovereignty supporter in that sovereignty should mean something. The decision on whether to incorporate Bureau of Indian Affairs and what to extent is a one-on-one relationship with the tribes themselves. And we have made no decision to do that because consultation should be among equals. And I think it's to advantage to be at the table on these critical decisions about permitting or NEPA or recreation, but the decision on whether to change from our current structure to fully incorporate into this structure is a decision that the tribes themselves, I think, should make as equals. I think it's to the advantage of being at the table at the very beginning, but the consultation is beginning, and what that structure would look like, we're not exactly sure. And the reason why, and I can tell you the different groups. I brought Simon Roosevelt and Gifford Pinchot III in the office, the 2 greatest icon families in the history of conservation. I've had roundtables with National Geographic and Audubon and Audubon Society, and we have a conservation roundtable because before I bring it to Congress and this body, I want to make sure that we have it right and we walk through unintended consequences, because this will be the largest reorganization in the history of this department, and we just want to make sure we have it right.